loud. And all right, there we go. Let me share the screen here. Okay. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Okay, sometimes there's a little bit of a delay. I'm going to minimize that like that. All right. Sorry, let's see. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Big Valley Beekeepers meeting. I'm just going to arrange my screen real quick here so I can see everything. And I'm going to try and keep an eye on people as they come into the waiting room, just in case we get some more. So, oh, and there we go. I have a couple more that are coming in. There we go. So thank you. So just so everybody has an idea just about who we are. So the Big Valley Beekeepers Guild is a guild that started just 2 years ago. We're just going into our third year. We're based out of Northern California, which in the Lodi, San Joaquin area. And because we have people on from across the country, because of COVID and because of all the Zoom stuff we can do and the virtual meetings, it's kind of cool to be able to have people from different parts of the country on. So this is kind of cool for us. But we've been promoting the group, and we basically meet monthly. We meet on the second Thursday of every month. And our goal is to educate and be a resource for local beekeepers. And we're fortunate that we're where we're located because we're close to resources like Randy Oliver, which, by the way, he's agreed that he's going to come speak for us in, I believe, July. So look for him at our July meeting to be our guest speaker. But we're a small group. We have a board of directors of 5 people, and we're looking for volunteers. We actually do have a position open on our board. So if you're interested in that, please email us back channel. And we are looking for volunteers to help us with a couple of things. We need help with our social media. We have a private Facebook group that we'd really like to be a little more active. And we need sponsors. We need sponsors for our Zoom meetings because each month it's $15 basically. And we would love to get sponsors for that, along with the different speakers that have speaker fees. A lot of people don't realize that speakers these days will charge $200 to $300 for their time. So being able to sustain that can be kind of interesting. And we're actually really considering starting a membership so that way people can help the clubs be successful going forward and helping us meet that need as far as speakers and Zoom fees. So if you're interested or would like to learn more about the guild, please definitely email us. And I should have put this on the slide, but but it's bigvalleybeekeepers@gmail.com. And actually, Michael, could you post that in the chat? Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be great. So tonight, what we're talking about, let me just see if I can get my screen here. All right. I'm just going to go like this. Sorry. Sometimes there's a delay with our internet. Let's see. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Sorry. Technical difficulties. There we go. Okay. Let me go to previous. Perfect. All right. So tonight, we already talked about our guild. Tonight, what we're going to look at is really what do you need to know? What are some things that if you're an experienced beekeeper, what are things that you wish you had known back when you first started that you know now? As well as, if you're a brand new person to beekeeping, we want to talk about what is it that you really need to get started. There's a lot of stuff available out there today. And what do you really need to spend your money on, and what are things that you can kind of, pass on. So, but we also want to talk about key dates in the first year of beekeeping. But just keep in mind, and you're going to hear this a lot, especially if you're a new beekeeper, is that beekeeping is local, which means what we do in Valley Springs, Northern California, is different than what Bill will do in Georgia. And it can be even microclimates. So for instance, what we do in Valley Springs might even be different than what like Debbie does in the Sacramento area. So just keep that in mind, right? And a lot of the beekeeping that we do is based on bee biology. So understanding bee biology and understanding weather and what grows in your area. I'd say those are probably the three main components that help us figure out what to do and when. Would everybody agree to that? I think so. I see some nods. Okay, good deal. So first we're going to just kind of go through these slides kind of more on the dates, and then insert kind of where we think, if you have a tip or trick, definitely unmute yourself and definitely speak up. And because we're here, we have experienced beekeepers and we have people that haven't quite gotten their bees yet. So we want to be able to have that open discussion too. So, all right. So let's see. I'm going to move my screen around a little bit here. There we go. So January. For a lot of us, not a lot of us, for us here in California, we're ordering our bees in January. January and February. February is sometimes considered a little bit late. But even before you order those first bees, one of the best things you can do is find a club to join. Maybe even the season before, take some classes. If you can find a mentor that can help you get familiar with bees, that's always kind of the pre-work, right? Being able to go and figure out, really what does this entail? And for those of you who have been in beekeeping now a couple of years, would anybody like to talk about their experience? Like did anybody here find a mentor before they got bees? No? Oh.
No, lots of YouTube.
Lots of YouTube. Well,
it was really hard to even find bees initially because I
mm-hmm. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Michael.
No, it was hard to even find where to find bees initially. So it was it depending upon the Facebook group and how savvy they are with tech. It was really hard to find where are you supposed to get bees from. So and it was somebody else in the same group that was asking the same questions, and then I messaged her, and she found Randy Oliver. I mean, he's for us, like 2 hours and a bit away, but it was at least a source. And then once I got bees from Randy, then I found all kinds of resources for nukes and for queens and for packages. And so if anybody were to ask in the Facebook group, I'm sure you would get plenty of answers now as far as where to get bees. But I'd even argue that even like probably December is the time that if you want to order a nuke. I know that Eric Oliver takes orders in December, and he sells out quickly. So, but no one's really thinking about bees in the wintertime. So that's the other rub too, is when you're thinking about bees, like in the spring, it's usually too late. So
that's an excellent tip. It really is. You almost have to be thinking about this, 6 months in advance, or think about, if it's something you're interested in, getting that information before you even, when you're thinking about it. I know for myself, go ahead. I
was going to say the other thing too is, even if you know where to get bees, you don't know, not all bee suppliers are what I would consider to be reputable. So, it's nice to have some experience or somebody that knows, who you can trust to get bees from, because, some of these commercial guys come out of office and they throw the bees on a nuke, and that doesn't necessarily always work out. And so it's nice to know somebody that is familiar with who you can trust and go to.
Well, and I think Paul, you tap on the biggest thing, which is if you're thinking about beekeeping, probably one of the best things you can do is to find somebody that already has bees, that's maybe had bees for a couple of years, and just ask if you can go and hang out with them when the next time they they work with their bees. And that may be in the year before you actually order your bees, right? So, get somebody to follow around and feel comfortable. I know for myself, I've always thought about having bees. And when I was a child, my father had bees. And so as an adult, I was always interested, but I would always drive by this one house every day after work. And they, certain months of the year, they would have a sign out that would say honey for sale. So I stopped and I said, hey, would you talk to them for a little bit? And then I said, hey, would you mind if I came out just to kind of see what you do with the bees? Because I'm thinking about doing my own. And they were more than happy to do that. And so I did have to get, a suit or get, some protective equipment. But, it was such a great thing because I wasn't sure how I feel. And it was amazing being around that many bees at one time, because you see a bee on a flower, or bee in the park, or, you don't see like a whole group of, several 100,000, a couple hundred, or maybe 1,000 bees all around. So just getting that exposure and then was huge. And then you have an idea of, you start to kind of get a feel for what, what they do when, and what's the technique, that kind of thing. So, but along Paul's line, I want to mention, so those here, maybe others can answer this for us. What's the difference between a package and a nuke? And this is an important one because, again, you have to know what you're buying. Would anybody like to volunteer to explain what that is, what the difference?
I could do that if you want.
Okay, that would be great, Scarlett.
It's about $100.
Yeah.
Oh. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
it is. Oh, no.
Okay. It's all right. It's already up there.
There you go. Oh, go ahead, Scarlett. There you go.
Packages are just, you're getting bees. That's all there is. You get about 3 pounds of bees and the bare bones of it. Well, with a nuke, you get a starter hive. You get 5 frames. That's the typical nuke. You get your queen and your hive.
That's exactly it. So your nuke is an already established small colony, basically, right? That queen should be laying. There should be all stages of brood, right? So there should be larvae, there should be eggs, there should be adult bees. They usually come, like you'll hear 4-frame, 5-frame nukes. They usually have a frame of honey, and then it should be a full bees. And they're established, meaning that that is their queen, that's their colony, right? And what's the advantage of that is they are more expensive, but they're already, yards and yards ahead of a package of bees, right? They already have frames built out. They already have some kind of food storage. They're ready to grow. So that's the benefit. That's why people pay as much as they do for the nukes, because they're going to get off to a quick start. Whereas the packages are literally, they will be compiled by the beekeepers will shake off bees, and then they'll pour, about 3 pounds worth into a box. The queen is usually in a queen cage, kind of suspended inside of the box, and there's a can of feed. So there's no frames, there's no brood, there's no built out anything. So you're literally taking that package and just really starting from scratch, right? All you're getting really is the bees. So that means that package is going to need a lot of care to get started and a lot more time.
one guy was advertising packaged bees. I think, I'm not sure if it was 2 pound or 3 pound, but for $60 a package. So I don't know. I'll turn to Mark Allen because I know that he likes packages. But is that the going rate currently? Because I know that looking at like at Oliveris, they have packages that started selling nukes, and actually the price difference was only $10 for them. But $60, especially if you have losses and you already have drawn comb, I mean, $60 is way more appealing.
Yes, and I think that's the key. I think if you already have a hive ready to go that already has built out frames, it's maybe you did have a colony that you lost last year, you didn't see any signs of disease, and you have, that would probably be the most perfect situation in the sense that you can just add that package. They can get right in there. Then all your, the frames are already built out, and then you're just making sure that the queen is doing what she's supposed to do, right? So, and remember your bee math, right? So, or DW up here in Northern California, we have a guy called DW that does a lot of cutouts and swarm captures, and he always talks about the bee math. So you know that you're gonna have to wait 21 days before you have your first bees hatching when you have that package. So now the reason that buying your bees is the most important step to start with is because then you're reserving your bees. Those bees that you get actually you're not going to just go to the store and pick them up. They won't be available until the weather cooperates, right? So in our area, it's usually April or May. For those of you in other areas, so like Scarlett and Bill, and oh gosh, who else? What time of year are you able to get bees?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure yet, so I've still got to talk to my supplier. She said that she would have 2 nukes for me, so I just don't know when that'll be.
Got it. And then how about you, Scarlett? You know when bees are typically available in your area?
I had actually ordered my bees from Main Lake, and I've got them pretty late in the season, actually.
Oh, okay. How late is late? What month?
If I remember correctly, it was I started in July, and I got them November.
Oh, wow. Okay. Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
Good deal.
Man Lake gets their bees from Oliveris.
Sorry, say that again, Paul.
I think Man Lake gets their bees from Oliveris.
Yeah.
Oh,
You do.
that's true. How about I know Mark. Mark, when do you typically have bees available, or what do you see being the most kind of determining factors on when bees do become available for people?
The earlier you make queens, the least quality you'll get out of them. So the first batch, if it's too early in the year, might not be all that great of queens, and that's been constant of all the producers. So that all comes into how well they made the queen, but it's mostly how well they are as far as being able to go out and mate. So whenever the drones are sort of packed in all the hives around, then that's pretty much you're in the good time period to do it. I'd say that I'm looking at March, somewhere in March, to start selling them, which means I'll start earlier than that. I'll push it back, just like you'll see people push back orders and stuff like that with any of your main suppliers, based on temperature might drop in February. We're looking at it now thinking it might be warm, but in February it might actually drop back down. We've had freezes in the trees and all that kind of thing in February before, so that might make a big difference on, how well the queens are. And so that will also affect anybody who's looking for packages or nukes or anything in between, is the queen, because you should be getting a new queen and not the old queen from anybody. Especially with a package, it should always be a new queen. If you're doing a nuke, some guys will have a cheaper price for last year's nukes. In other words, they've made nukes up supposedly ahead of time, like November, October, and then you're getting the queen from last year. In our area, that's not a good idea because unlike some of the other states that might be listening, you don't get any snow at all in California unless you're up in the mountains. So we stay at least above freezing almost the entire winter. We'll get lows in the maybe even into the 20s, but that's rare. Our lows are in the 30s for the coldest part. So we have brood rearing that kind of continues 12 months out of the year. Not quite as bad as, say, Florida, but we do. Those queens are still producing eggs where a normal queen in the north will have stopped through the winter. So she has a certain amount of eggs, yes, but it's mostly she has stored a certain amount of sperm from the first flight that she did, or 2 flights maybe, when she mated a year ago, that she can actually run out halfway through the next year. So a year and a half, she might be done. And they're going to have to make their own queen, or you're going to have to buy one. So you should always get new queens when you're doing packages or nukes. Look for new queens, newly mated queens.
How long do queen bees usually live?
So like here in the warm part of the year, they can live longer, but they might not be producing well. But we've always said 3 to 5 years, and that's really based on colder areas. I think we're more like 2 to 4 years in California. And that's why you'll see commercial guys who really depend on their bees producing the best. They'll requeen every single year. And a hobbyist here in the warmer parts of California, at least, should be probably requeening every other year. You can always let them do whatever you want in the north here, because we don't have Africanized bees. So you don't have to worry about them making their own queens and all that kind of stuff. And making your own queens is really fun. But if you're worried about timing, or maybe you don't want to lose all your bees when the queen goes out and mates, she never comes back because a bird got her. If that's going to be something that causes you anxiety or anything like that, then that's when it's a good time to buy your own mated queens. And I would get them, in the earlier part of the year, probably.
Good deal. Thank you, Mark. That's great. So so you want to order your bees first, and then you want to start working on getting your equipment. And people always think, well, wait a minute, don't you need your equipment first? But no, because of the way, and the timing of it, again, you want to reserve those bees, get those bees ready so you know that you have some coming. And then you have time to be able to look for your equipment. So on those lines, where does everybody typically get their equipment? Who would like to offer some suggestions on where to go?
Nowadays, you don't have too many I mean, you got a ton of online choices. But you kind of, if you're a new guy starting out, or girl, you really don't know what to buy. And I think you kind of depend on the folks in the store being able to point to things and saying, or somebody telling you what you need. Beekeeping store downtown on X Street, or not? Is it X? 21st. As much beekeeping equipment as they once did. So, whereas at one point in time, I would recommend you could go there. Probably wouldn't recommend going there anymore. There is the bee box. I've been in there a few times and it's not my preferred provider. So online you have Man Lake, you have Dadant, you
Sorry, you're cutting out, Paul. Are you still there? Here, I'll keep going. So our biggest, at least here in Northern California, are more local places. There is a place in Sacramento, like Paul talked about, and then there's Man Lake. Man Lake's only, in Woodland, so it's only an hour and a half or so away from us for the most part. I have been up to the Dadant store up in Chico, but what I've found is you kind of have to figure out what you feel is going to meet your needs. I know the Dadant store, it has limited hours. It's only open certain parts of the year. But a really important tip is that when you start to get your equipment, try to get it from the same place, because they do tend to manufacture them a little bit differently. So sometimes they don't fit together as well. And then in the chat, I think, let's see, Phil had a great tip, which is really try to stay away from buying your equipment on Amazon. A lot of that stuff is made in China and it's just not made well enough. You can always try to make your own if you're, a good carpenter type woodworking person. A lot of people do that. But you can also find sales. And if you buy in bulk, if you have a couple of people that want to get equipment with you, that will help bring the cost down. Sometimes our guild has done group orders. In fact, one year, I don't know what happened, but the FedEx guy ended up bringing it up to Michael and Christina's house. So his backyard was full of beekeeping.
Well,
supply.
no, what happened is that they weren't going to deliver until the following Monday, but Cherie wanted to do her boxes over the weekend, so the guy delivered all these they were unassembled, but it was his own Tesla, and he shoved unassembled bee boxes everywhere in that Tesla, and then delivered them. So
That was pretty amazing. I forgot about that.
And that was due to Cherie. I mean, I was like, well, he's not coming, Cherie. So like, wait, give me his number, and then he shows up in his Tesla. So
That's right. I somehow convinced him that we needed that. I was like, no, we have a bee club full of people that need their stuff.
Jedi mind trick.
We have bees coming.
Need the boxes today.
Oh, that's funny. I totally forgot about that. Oh, so let's see. So what does everybody feel about used equipment, like that maybe you can find on Craigslist, that kind of thing? Any thoughts or opinions on that?
I personally steer clear, but I can't tell everyone else what to do. I steer clear because though I've never gotten it myself, foul brood is a thing, and foul brood is a disease that's very, very, very long lived in equipment. And so it can hang around, and you get some equipment free from someone and it might cost you everything, because once it's in there, you basically have to get rid of the bees, the boxes, and everything else. So I steer clear of it, but I can imagine, if money's tight, maybe that's where you look for those kind of deals. So, yeah.
If you do get used equipment and you want to try to sanitize it, I've heard that a lot of people will use like a blowtorch, or does that really make a difference?
That would be for the woodenware, and I you've heard me say it over and over again. I think the woodenware is the cheapest part of a hive. So I can get boxes for $14 brand new, but I buy in bulk. So let's say you get them for $20 from Man Lake, which I just saw they've got assembled ones for $20 each. Yeah, you would blow torch the inside, and it really just needs a pass. What you're trying to do is get the spores of foul brood. All the other bee diseases are not something long-lived, and they're not something that's catastrophic either, for that matter. So it's really only that disease you're worried about. And that means you really can't hang on to the wax. And that's really the expensive part, is the frames with wax. So you're really only saving, the boxes that are the cheapest part, I think. But it's good practice if you do have old equipment to try to sanitize best you can. We don't have, to my knowledge, still any of the irradiation devices, equipment places you take your boxes to and get irradiated. They do that in Canada and Australia and New Zealand, and it'll kill the spores. But I don't think we have that in the United States, at least not on the Western United States.
Very good. What are some other types of equipment from those of you that have been keeping bees now for a while? What are some must-haves as far as your equipment to have ready before your bees arrive?
Well, due to this year, if anybody is new in buying equipment or bee boxes, buy the robbing screens along with the bee boxes, because usually that's a late summer activity, and when it's happening and you need robbing screens, they usually are in short supply, and then your options are limited. So just get robbing screens along with your hives.
Great tip.
Can you explain what that is?
Say again?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Can you explain what that is?
A robbing screen is basically, robbing activity happens usually when late summer, known as the dearth, when there are limited resources. So the bees are opportunistic. So if you have more than one colony, usually bees will smell honey from the other colony and they will go in there and rob it. And what a robbing screen does is it basically creates an entrance at a different location in front of the hive, where only the bees that live in that colony know where the entrance is, and the other bees are at the screen where they can't get in to the colony. The other option you can do is to reduce the entrance, but if it's really hot, ventilation can be an issue. And basically, what it happens is basically there's just a small opening where they can defend the hive a lot better. And I like the analogy of if you've seen the movie 300, the Spartans were able to defend Sparta, from this little canyon against the plenitude of the Persian army. So that's basically the same concept. These bees are able to defend against anything because you have an opening that's that big. So, but if you look at Man Lake, it depends on if you run 10 frame boxes or 8 frame boxes, because they're sized differently. But the robbing screen goes on the front, and then I usually buy a strap that goes along with the hive as well, and that keeps the robbing screen in place.
Thank you.
Yep.
So some of the other forms of equipment. Go ahead, Paul. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you want entrance reducer. It kind of serves the same purpose. Robbing screen kind of serves the screen on the front of it. The bees that are robbing are attracted to the scent, so they'll go to the screen, whereas the bees that are from that hive they know where the entrance is. That's the advantage of a robbing screen. But I think in most cases, a entrance reducer generally comes with the hive, and that's more just shrinking the entrance down and making it easier for the bees to guard. But you asked about equipment that people need when they first get a hive, and I would say some sort of feeder, because you're going to want to feed your bees when they're trying to build out comb. I would not recommend an entrance feeder. That's most commonly what they'll try to sell you. You want to figure out ways, and we can talk about it if somebody needs. There's ways to feed inside the hive, and that's I would recommend that method.
Thank you, Paul. That's awesome. So yes, and there's actually some great stuff getting mentioned in the chat too. There's I know Brad just said, as a hobbyist, if he was going to start over, he'd actually go with medium-sized boxes. So you do, as a new beekeeper, you have a lot of decisions to make, right? Like, so do you want a 10 frame box or an 8 frame box? Do you want to use the medium boxes, which can also be 10 frames? The best thing to do, honestly, is to learn about the equipment is to get a copy of the catalog, like a Manlake catalog. Start going through it and then start doing that research. And March, just as this slide says, really is the busiest month in that for hive equipment to be sold. So they're going to have sales. You're going to look for even just some of your basic equipment like a hive tool, right? Smokers. There's lots of different kinds of smokers. Your suit, ventilated suit versus solid cloth suit. Do you want a full suit or do you want a jacket, or do you just want a hood? Thinking even about gloves, right? Early in the in our social hour, I think we talked about gloves, that kind of thing. For myself, as I kind of talked about earlier, I steer away from the really heavy, thick gloves. I think as a new beekeeper, you're afraid to get stung, right? You're afraid of getting stung, on your hands, because your hands are what are going to be doing the work. But really, the best way to keep from squishing bees is to either go gloveless or use something like a vinyl. The reason I go with the vinyl is because, again, it keeps my hands clean. I can still feel the bees and manipulate the hive pretty well without squishing bees on accident. And when the bees do try to sting through the vinyl, they just have a tougher time. You still can get stung. You can get stung even with the heavy leather gloves, but it just gets caught up, I think, in the vinyl. So
it is hard to explain, when you start out and you have the heavy gloves and you're trying to move frames, and then when you try to go with, then when you do the like the thin latex or the nitrile gloves, or even barehanded, just how much of a better beekeeper you are, because with the gloves you really can't feel the bees, because they love to go underneath that part of the frame that you like to grab. They seem to be right there, where you can, with the gloves, with the nitrile or even barehanded, you can feel them and go, oh, and then it takes that extra second, and they move out of your way, and then you're able to do it, and then you can just you're just much more efficient. But it messes with your mind, because you're like, well, I don't want to get stung, but yet, but it's kind of, I mean, you need to get stung anyway. So that's kind of something you need to kind of get out of your head, and just think of it as a badge of honor as you get stung. Like, I'm earning my stripes, or, paying my dues, because you really need, to get stung at least 12 times a year. I mean, some people with the numbers contestable, but or else you can develop an allergic reaction to bees. So.
Yeah, if you take a class from Randy Oliver is a big proponent of no gloves at all. And I get why, because without any gloves, it kind of forces you to slow down, be more careful, and think more about what you're doing. On the other hand, it can be a little overwhelming or intimidating for new people that are just starting out. So
yeah. Yeah, I would recommend.
Sometimes you get a little too careless, carefree.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend kind of like whatever. I mean, if you're just starting out, it's whatever makes you comfortable. Because if you're trying to do it without gloves and you're really afraid, you're gonna make mistakes anyway. So just start out with whatever makes you comfortable. I mean, if you're really afraid of being stung, then just keep the gloves on. I had the big huge gloves on for my first year. And then it wasn't until my second year that I started using the nitrile gloves, and then I will switch. And actually, Mark Allen has the best advice, because what he does is he starts out barehanded until he gets stung enough in his hands, and then he puts gloves on. So I do it that way. I go like, well, I'll just go until, and sometimes I don't get stung, and then I'm like, and then you're kind of like, well, I kind of need to get stung, but and on bad days where you do get stung a lot, I mean, you shouldn't get stung in your hands too much, or else they will swell up a little bit, especially at the start. But you just put gloves on after the fact. Well, I've got stung twice in each hand. Now the gloves go on. So
yeah, somehow I don't know why, but after getting stung in the hand, the first one hurts a lot more than the others.
Yeah, after the second one or third one, you're just like, it's like whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter at that point.
I will preface that I do not swell at all anymore. I've been stung way too many over the decades now.
But it will still itch at the site that you get stung though, right?
Not always, but yeah,
Not
I
always?
can still get it, especially if I get them on my arms or something.
Will
I
it
go, why am I the next day? Oh, that's right, I got stung there.
will it peel after a while too? Still,
No,
it won't peel because like I'll
no,
get stung and it will itch and then it will be red and swell up. Then like a week or two later, it'll start to peel at that site.
huh. Yeah, I can't tell where I was stung even an hour later.
Wow.
So
Oh, okay.
it's not a superpower or anything. I've just been stung a lot. And I used to swell like crazy. I think all the new beekeepers are the ones who do it regularly. Eventually, have the cool picture somewhere where their whole eye is swollen shut. Yeah. I had that. I was going to college at the time, and so I wore sunglasses through all my classes, so nobody's staring at me.
Yeah.
But,
Too funny.
that's forgetting to zip up your veil.
Yes. The reason for everybody that's on, so the reason it's so important and why Michael keeps talking about too, about why you really need to get stung is because as a beekeeper, you're more exposed to the everything in the hive, the equipment, everything. And if you don't get stung enough, believe it or not, you're more likely to develop an allergy. So I think Randy Oliver suggests something like you need to get stung like 60 times a year. Just like, okay, how many times per month? So yeah, I don't think so it's funny because I think about that and I think I'm probably developing an allergy for myself because I'm not getting stung enough. But at the same time, when you're a new beekeeper and you're working those hives, your goal is to feel comfortable and to learn your technique and to understand, right, what you're looking at when you go in there. And you have so much going on at once, to get stung, you don't want to, it's one more thing you want to try to avoid at least while you're learning, or at least that's my thought.
Yeah, and Randy's probably in his hives about 350 days out of the year. So
Yeah.
60 doesn't sound a lot
And
at all when you think about that.
he wanders around in flip flops and shorts and and he's like, oh, I just got stung, but he doesn't even feel it anymore. Yeah. So one of the things I want to make sure to mention is a lot of times people are trying to think of, okay, I'm going to start out, I only want one hive. And we really discourage that. The best and ideal way to start out with bees is with two or three hives. The reason for that is that it gives you a comparison. And when you're learning beekeeping, you're learning to identify what you're looking at in the hive, right? Right. So even like with my background right now, understanding what brood is, what an egg looks like, what stage is that larva or pupae, what does that frame need to look like to indicate that it's a healthy, strong colony versus one that's maybe on the weaker side. You can tell a lot about what you need to do next based on your frames. So by having a second hive or third hive, it gives you an instant comparison. You know how those colonies line up based on how you're comparing them with each other. So, and part of that, does anybody have anything to add on to that about how many hives you should start out with?
Yeah, you should have double what you think that you actually want.
Oh, there we go.
So for me, it's like really two, so we have four.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just really because, if you have a hive that is not doing well, you can grab resources from your other hives that are doing great. Because my first year I bought two. I had one hive that started out really awesome, and then another hive that was so-so, and then towards the end of the year it was flip-flopped. So I had one hive that was in a very, very weak, and one hive very, very strong. But if you had one that was weak, you would kind of feel, well, what did I do wrong with this hive? But I had two, and I had one great. I have no idea why it was great, and I had one that was very weak. I had no idea why it was weak. So it's kind of, it kind of gives you a little more confidence of like, well, I do them both the same, and sometimes just things happen. So, but definitely having another hive you can share resources with is very valuable.
Yeah. Something else that you need to know as a new beekeeper is that you're not alone. You're not out there by yourself, even though you might feel like that when you're out with your hives. There are a lot of great community resources when it comes to beekeeping. So even your local library, groups like ours, you have an opportunity to learn, and even just being able to network and follow and connect with other beekeepers. One of the most well worth the time kind of activities is going to other people's hives. Say, hey, can I just hang out with you and see what you do with your bees? You learn so much. Or if someone's willing to come over to your house. I know my first 2 years, I had probably a lot of the people in this club come over, and said, hey, will you help me look at this? There was a point in time, I think, when even Paul came over, because I had one hive that had, was missing a frame, and the comb, it was a huge mess. Or was it you, Michael? I think Michael and Christina actually, I think, were the ones that came over. Paul's been over too. So, but the key is that everybody's here to help each other and to be able to find those resources and be able to connect with those people, right? People in your area, so that you really don't have to do it alone. Let's see. All right. We've talked about what equipment you need. Something else that this picture is reminding me of is things sometimes that you don't need. And everybody's beekeeping journey is a little bit different. One of the common things you're going to hear is if you have a room full of beekeepers and you ask them a question, they're all going to give you a different answer. So if for our group, our guild, we tend to take a more scientific approach. We really believe that bee biology is important, and that you are your bee's caretaker, which means you need to care for them, right? You have people have pets. They have dogs, they have cats, they have chihuahuas. Well, I guess that's a dog. Okay. They have parakeets. You have pets that you take care of. You feed them, you water them, and you make sure that they're free of pests. And so that means, just like you would treat your dog or your cat for fleas or ticks, you're going to need to take care of your bees and keep those pests away from them as well. And that's kind of the approach that we take. In this picture here, what I see is a queen excluder. I've always used queen excluders because they're just super handy to keep the queen in one box versus another, especially if I'm trying to do splits. There's another thing here, which is a brush. I don't think I've ever used my brush. Does anybody use their bee brush that they probably got when they first were starting beekeeping? All the time. Oh, you do? Oh, yeah.
I've used mine when I'm removing my honey supers. I don't use a fume board. I take the frames, I shake them, and then whatever bees are left, I brush them off and put it in a box with a lid. So,
well, gosh,
they're a good tool to have, but you're not going to use it every time you're in the hive. But it's a good one to have for things where you need to move the bees off the frame without shaking them. So that's something that you use a lot when you're making queens, because you don't want to move the larvae inside the shells. You can't shake them, so you got to brush them off. It was Paul, right? Paul, you said that. Like Paul said, that when you're doing anything, like maybe you're taking the bees off the honey frame, either you did use the fume board or you didn't. You still probably have some left, right? And the same with bee escapes and all that kind of. So yeah. Taking them off, because as you hold up a honey frame around bees, you're going to get bees show up if you have it there long enough.
Yeah.
So you need to, maybe brush them off before you get into the honey house or your garage. Another good thing is you've gotten yourself over there, like I do. If I've got enough hives all over the place, that you go inside the garage and somebody says, hey, you still have about 300 bees on your back, before you go into the garage. So this is great for the bee brush to get the back here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's nice and
that's why I'm not allowed to extract inside the house anymore.
Oh, well, there you go. So that was a perfect example of, I have a couple of bee brushes and I actually always have them with me, but I think I've used it once and maybe it's a lot like the shaking technique. When you shake a frame, you have to use, your technique with the brush has to be just right. But I've never been successful. But that makes, with using the brush. So that makes sense. There you go. What else? What are some tools out there that have just been either completely useless or something you can't live without?
This is Debbie. I want to mention something. The bee brush, sometimes I've gotten bees stuck in the bristles, and that's kind of a pain for me and the bees. And I heard this trick of somebody using a large feather, and I did try feathers, and they work really well. It kind of does the same thing as a bee brush. So if you guys ever have like a big turkey feather or eagle feather or whatever type of big feather, they're kind of cool. So you should try it.
Would a feather duster be overkill?
I wouldn't use a feather duster. Yeah, that might not work, but just one large simple feather is pretty cool.
That's a great tip. We have some from a goose. So we have geese and ducks and stuff and chickens. So there we go. If anybody needs feathers in your local, let me know.
Oh, cool. Try it.
All right. Anything else? Anything that now, as a beekeeper, you're looking back thinking, okay, I could not live without this particular tool. And the opposite, what's something that you've gotten that you thought, why on earth did I spend the money on?
Well, I'm all about gadgets, and I did buy one of those combination hive tools that I think I actually gave it away in the raffle because it was just no good. But I mean, I would just recommend if you're starting out, just to go basic. Don't buy a whole lot because a lot of beekeepers, especially starting out, will kind of like the gadgets, like the gizmos, and really, I mean, it's just like a bee suit, a hive tool, and a smoker is really like all you need to start out with. I mean, like the other stuff is is kind of, you will get there as you get into your bees more. You'll figure out like what you need and don't need. So, but yeah, just a good small hive tool is really the trick.
or 10.
One thing I have.
And
Oh, go ahead.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, we were just go ahead. We were just commenting that you need 10 hive tools, not just one. There we go. If there's something you're going to buy several of, get hive tools.
And that's true because they end up getting, I mean, if you have more than one hive, they get covered full of like propolis and honey and they get sticky, and I get annoyed with that. So I have at least 3 or 4 of the small hive tools, and I swap them out. So, but yeah, I mean, that is true.
I like the ones with the little hook on them so that you can get it under the frame and help lift a frame out. Because sometimes if it's propolized in, it's hard to get it broken apart. So with the little hook, you can hook it under the frame and use it as a pry and pop the frames out. The other thing I like is the, I'm not sure what it's called. You basically hang it off the side of your hive, and it's a frame rest, I guess.
Yep, frame rest.
Yeah, because when you're doing your inspections, you want to pull the frame closest to the outside out first to make room for pulling all the other frames out. Otherwise, you risk, they call it rolling the queen. You could kill the queen if you decide to go straight to the middle of the hive and start pulling frames out. So you want to pull a frame out, and that frame rest gives you a place to set it.
Yeah. And that's something else too, is as you're learning your technique as a beekeeper of opening the hive and lifting those frames, it's very super important to go slow. And I know I'm a geek. I totally practiced on an empty box with frames. Because one of the most common things that happens with new beekeepers is they end up accidentally squishing their queen when they're raising that frame up and out and then placing it back. So but you know what, before we, just one more last equipment type of question. screen bottom boards or solid bottom boards?
All my hives are screen bottom board.
And all mine are all solid.
Mine are
There
all
you go.
screen.
Yeah.
Oh, tomato. See, let's see. Exactly.
I like screen bottom boards.
Mine
Yeah.
are all-
I use screen bottom boards with a slatted rack on the bottom to slow down the airflow.
Yeah, I have slider racks as well.
Oh, there you go. So what I want to do, because I'm looking at the time, I want to use, because I know we have some new folks here that are thinking about beekeeping that probably have a ton of questions. So really what I'd like to use is maybe our last 15, 20 minutes to kind of do open questions, if that's okay with everybody. But just before we do that, just a reminder, our next meeting is going to be on February 11th. We don't have a topic completely yet, but if you have some ideas for topics, totally suggest them to us. We'd love to hear them. Be sure, if you want to get on our email list, make sure that you send us your email address or put it in the chat box as well. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can kind of see everybody. So let's do open forum with questions. If you want, you can raise your hand or just go ahead and unmute yourself. I'm going to mute myself temporarily, but go from there. Oh, hi, Stephen.
Sheree, there
Hi.
is.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, Stephen. Stephen, we
Yes.
can hear you. There you
Okay.
go. Okay.
I'm wondering what I need to do when I'm doing a winter inspection. How do I protect my bees?
Good question. Well, I think, and you're here in Stockton, California, right?
Yes.
Yes. So everybody can weigh in on this. My first thought is the best way to protect your bees during a winter inspection is to make sure that the temperature is no less than 55 degrees when you go in there. And you're going to want to it can't be an hour-long inspection. When you are doing a winter inspection, you have a purpose. There's a specific reason why you're going in there because you don't really want to disrupt that colony or that cluster like I did. So, you have a specific purpose as to why you're going in there, and you get in there and you get out. So what does everybody else think?
Yeah, that was my question. Is kind of like you need to have a really good reason why you want to go in there, and definitely I mean like today it was 60 and that was fine, but kind of I try not to go into my bees around this time of year if I could possibly help it, unless I have a real need. But if I do open them up, I try and get in there quickly, efficiently, and then close them back up again.
You can tell just by looking at the entrance usually how your hive's doing, especially when it's warm. You get a good warm sunny day. If you don't see bees flying in and out bringing back pollen, then there is a problem and you want to get in there and look. If they're busy flying in and out, chances are everything's good. Leave them alone.
Yeah, and actually, before we started this meeting, we were talking about this very subject, and it was almost, if you do have a problem, or, there's not really a lot you can do this time of year to fix it. I mean, you can combine colonies, I assume, but, really in the wintertime, if there's issues or if there's like a handful of bees and a queen, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot that you can do this time of year because there's no packages available. There's no, it's just kind of, it is what it is. So you have to have a really good reason and kind of a pointed purpose for going into a hive this time of year.
Do any of you have those, because I just got one of those floor cameras, the infrared. I'm still learning how to use it. But a lot of people have gotten those. They connect to the phone and they basically take the heat signature. So it gives you an idea of how large that heat source is within the hive. Does anybody else have one of those or use them?
I've used them. They're really cool. Another thing too is if you do have a bottom board that has, the removable slide out tray, that's a good way to see activity that's going on within your hive. So you can see the trails at the bottom if brood is hatching, and it's a good thing to be able to inspect without having to open your hive, along with the FLIR.
All right, good deal. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah.
Everybody, all right.
Marie, there was somebody in the comments or the chat section. I think there may have been a couple questions in there.
Okay, let's go through those. Let's see. All right. Wow, we have a lot. It's going to be hard for me to scroll through. Okay, hold on. Let's see.
Is there a way to save all this content, Cherie?
There is.
Okay.
There is. I can save the chat too. Yeah. Hold on. Anybody have any questions that they entered in the chat that just want to ask? Let's see. Ask verbally.
Anna Aguilar Lara asked a question about
Can you see it? Okay.
your hive, and the bees were looked like a weak hive, about a third of the frame or bees left, and was wanting to know what to do.
Oh, okay. Anna, are you still on?
Yeah, I checked today, and I found a lot of bees that they were dead. So I cleaned up. I have very few bees, so I was wondering if there's anything else that I can do right now, or just let them be and hopefully they will survive.
Did you
until
spot
I
the
get my
queen at
next
all?
bees.
Anna, did you spot
No,
the
I
queen
didn't.
at all? Oh, you didn't. Okay. Okay.
I
How
did
many?
not, yeah.
How many bees do you think were in there? Like what size cluster?
I will say, I will say maybe between 60 to 70. Not that many.
Yeah, I wouldn't give that hive much, if any, chance of making it. Usually when you get a weak hive like that, the first thing you want to do is reduce it down as small as you can get it, which is usually a 5-frame nuke. But with that many bees, there's no way they're going to be able to keep the queen or any brood warm. So is that your only hive?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, if you had another hive, you could combine it, but yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot you can do. I mean, you can try it, but I'd only give it like a 20%, 10%, if even that, chance of surviving.
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe order some
Thank
bees,
you.
Anna. Or yeah.
I will. Thank you. Thanks.
So
I know.
I have,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Bill.
I'm getting the 2 hives, and I've seen places, or I've seen pictures, and I'm just kind of curious on what you guys do. I've seen people put the hives on pallets, and I've seen people put hives on 1 or 2, and I've even seen up to 3 cement blocks high. And I'm trying to figure out what is maybe some practices that you guys do to get your hives up off the ground. And I've also heard to lean them forward a little bit to keep the moisture out of the hive.
Yep. All the above.
Yeah. I know. I use cinder blocks, but the ground that I have them on is not level at all. But I also use a lot of those. What are those things called? They're like little wedges that you get for like door frames and stuff. You can get at like Home Depot or the hardware store.
Oh, like the shim?
Shims. There we go. I always have a package of shims out in my bee yard. But for a really good practice is to try and keep your beehive on its own base, each one, because what happens a lot of times if they're on the same, like a lot of times people will have like one long structure that then all their beehives are placed on. But what happens is you go to your first hive and inspect it, you're causing vibrations, right? Whenever you get into that hive, those vibrations flow down. So by the time you get to the end hive, the bees already, they've known that you were there from the very start. And sometimes that can aggravate them. I don't know if anybody else has had that experience, but for me, I just keep them on the cinder blocks. I have found though, that if the cinder blocks are faced a certain direction, the holes of them, sometimes I've had wasps, paper wasps, try to get in there and start a nest. So I try to watch for that. But what does everybody else do?
I used to have 2 2x4s and 2 cinder blocks, sometimes 3, depending on how heavy the hives get. And then you just drop them down, put the 2 on each side. It ends up being exactly the width between the front and the back. Stand on your bottom board. And then I could fit 5 on there and still keep a space between the hives. All of my hives are commercial pallets now. So I've got 4 hives to a pallet. When we have here in northern central California, we have usually a flood season. And so we've had years where we have standing water. And so I'll have a pallet down, a regular old pallet, like from the back of Home Depot. And then commercial pallet on top. So that would give you, I don't know, what is that? 10 inches, 8 inches? Let's say 8 inches. 8 inches of space between the ground, right? You're just trying to keep it up off the ground. But, I've seen you just put a single on an actual flipped over cinder block. That would work too. So.
And you said
also,
2 wide?
I missed that last part.
Did you say like 2 wide cinder blocks?
Yeah, you can do 2 wide. It's probably better than 1 because, 1 has a certain amount of width. Mm-hmm. So 2 would work. Yeah. Oh, you mean on the 2 2x4s, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I put 1 not quite at the end, because then you're just wasting space. So I don't know, about a third way in or maybe a quarter of the way in and a quarter way in. And then, like I said, if it starts to bow, then you just put 1 in the middle too.
Okay.
Depends on the weight.
Is it hard, like after you've got beehives established, it's probably not easy to put cinder blocks in the middle then, right?
Right, unless you take them off real quick and put them on.
Okay.
Yeah, you want it up off the ground for a couple different reasons. One of the reasons being, a full deep super, if it doesn't even have to be full of honey. Let's say it's 60-70% full. That it's going to weigh probably about 80 pounds. And so the lower it is to the ground, the more you're bending over and you risk injuring your back or something. So the higher it is with that heavy weight, the better off you're going to be. The other thing is they say skunks or other critters like to investigate beehives. And the benefit of having it up higher is they have to get up on their hind legs to get into the hive, and it exposes their soft underside and makes it easier for the bees to defend the hive.
Okay, thank you.
Also, Man Lake sells metal hive stands that kind of expand and contract if it's a 10 frame box or an A-frame. And what's kind of useful with those is if you have an issue with ants, it has 4 legs that you can put into 4 cups and then put oil or water in the cups, and that way they'll keep the ants from getting into your hives. So that's an option too, if you have an ant issue.
All right. I know that we have some of our 4-Hers, local 4-Hers on. Hi, Daniel. Daniel, did you have any questions or anything? Can't hear you. No? Oh, you're good? Okay. All right, good deal. This is what's so cool is it's the future of beekeeping. We love it. Thank you, Daniel. Thanks so much. Okay. So let's see. I know that there was some comments in the chat too. I want to bring up, since we're talking about hives too, is location. Where's the best spot to keep our hives, or especially because once you end up placing your hives, you're typically keeping them there. I mean, unless you're a commercial beekeeper and you're moving them around, you can move them, but it can be a little tricky. So where does everybody, what are some tips on where to place your hives?
I live out in the country, so it's wide open for me. I can put them anywhere. Well, I shouldn't say anywhere I want to because I'd get in trouble if I did that. But is it north? You want to face the entrance north usually, so it gets the mornings. Is it south? There's a direction you point it. Like,
Oh no, it's where the sun rises, so east actually, right?
Southeast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because then they get that first morning sun.
And then you want them to be in full sun and afternoon shade, if possible. But if you can't get afternoon shade, then just full sun.
Yeah, bees tend to. We think that we'll be more comfortable as beekeepers working our bees in the shade. It doesn't work that way.
Nope.
No. See.
if you can, I think the recommendation is about 4 feet apart, but that minimizes drift between hives. It was 4 to 5 feet, I think.
Yeah.
If you're in town, you have neighbors. Sometimes if you point the entrance right at the fence or some type of a taller structure, it'll force the bees to go up and it won't be as much of an issue with your neighbors.
Good tips. Very good. So yeah, find a location that is in mostly sun, faces the morning or faces the fence if you're in an urban environment. And then have enough, accommodate for how much room you'll need to get around the hive as you work the hive. Everybody kind of tends to have a side that they prefer. I don't know if it's left-handed, right-handed or something like that. But for me, I always like to start on the, I guess on the right side of the hive. For me, that's facing south for whatever reason. I don't like the other side. So I don't know if everybody has a preference like that. Oh, all right. Well, I think we have time for one more question. Anybody have one more question that they'd like to ask? You know, Melissa, we have a few people here that are thinking about getting into bees. So any dying questions that you're thinking about?
I'll ask another question. Can you hear me?
Yes, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, if I wanted to move my beads about 30 yards, what would be the best process to do that?
A little at a time.
Pardon?
A few feet at a time over a couple of nights.
I want to
the
move.
best way.
I want to move them from shade to sunlight.
Okay. I mean, you could do all 30 feet at once, but you're going to have a lot of bees looking for where the old hive used to be.
I have about 10 hives. I have about 10 hives.
Okay.
I have about, okay.
If you can physically, I mean, if it isn't too much of a nuisance, then I would move them all a little bit. Like we're talking like 5 feet at a time. If you can, 10 feet at a time, probably be fine too. 10 feet every night.
I have the ability to lock them in to the hive. So I was thinking about just lock them in, move them, leave them locked in for 3 or 4 days, and then open the hive up, let them get out.
Well, we're kind of warm. You're in our area, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, he's in Upton. Yeah.
If it's going to be a warm day, like 65, 70, right? That's pretty warm for right now. I would worry about keeping them locked in that long, even a day. If we were more like 50 degrees, 55 right now, then you could lock them in. They really only need a day if you're going to try that.
So wait until it's going to rain and then maybe do it?
Yeah, there you go. Right.
Okay. Okay.
That's a good idea.
All right.
But if you were to move them all at once and lock them in, I mean, you're still going to have a lot of bees going right back to where the hives were. You know, and it depends on how much of a nuisance it is. But I know that you know that there have been incidents where people have moved hives like in one fell swoop, and then it caused an issue where the bees were all gathered where all the hives were. So it needs to be just the 3 feet or like 5 feet a day. Or the other option is you move them 5 miles away, and then I think you have to wait a few weeks, and then you can move them back to where you want them.
Yeah, I don't have the ability to do that.
Right.
So it's all at once, lock them in, or like you said, like 3 or 5 feet a day.
Yeah. Yeah, they have bee hand trucks, like kind of thing to make the moving easier because I mean, for if you're running 2 boxes, it is pretty heavy for one guy to do them. There's also, I know Mark Allen has like the 2-man hive carrier, which makes it easy to move them. But if you're talking 3 feet, I mean, I think it's manageable. 10 is a bit much for one guy, but I mean, it is kind of manageable.
Yeah, I had to find that. I couldn't remember where I put it when I went to take it to your house.
Man Lake sells them. So
I moved my bees 10 feet one year, and it wound up the bees kept circling, going back and circling where they were before. So if you take it in little sections, that would be much better. Another thing is once you move them, put some kind of obstacle in front of their entrance and exit. That way they'll go out and say, hey, let me look around and see where I am. There's something different here. And they'll reorient to the new location.
Yeah, I was going to recommend that, like an old branch from a tree. Like if you're pruning your trees, take an old branch and put it over the entrance or any kind of brush, or it forces them to reorient.
Yeah, I was just kind of scared about attempting this. I've heard of nightmares occurring, so I just was afraid to do it.
Yeah. Very good. Well, go ahead.
Maybe I should try one hive, see how it works.
Well, just if you're going to move them and you do it all in one fell swoop, you can put a bait hive, just a single box with some frames in it, in the old location. And each night they'll go, the bees will go into the bait hive that didn't figure out and reorient on the new hive, and then put that bait hive on the top of your hive in the evening, and then the next morning take it off and put it back over where it was. And it usually takes 3 or 4 days, and they'll figure out that where they're supposed to be.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you.
Good deal. Well, I want to cover one last thing before we end our meeting. I saw a good question come into the chat just about sugar, sugar syrup. And because we're coming up on the time when we're going to need to offer them the 1-to-1 ratio. And just a super quick, everyone probably has their own technique, but a super easy trick to it is I have, for myself, what I do is I save those big iced tea kind of jugs, 1 gallon jugs. And I typically will have 1 or 2 in the fridge. But the way I mix it is I just take the raw, granular white sugar, and I'll take a huge 8-cup, it's like 8-cup Pyrex glass measuring cup, right? I will put in 4 cups of sugar and then basically get the tap water as hot as I can and just, start fill it up to the top, stirring as I go, and then stir it till it's dissolved, and then pour it into my gallon jug that I keep ready in the fridge. The other thing is I usually will add a teaspoon of bleach to that. It helps prevent mold and that kind of thing from, on the sugar. It doesn't hurt the bees. And sometimes I'll even buy Tractor Supply they sell bottles. It's probably crazy expensive, but but it just has some extra stuff in it besides sugar water. So I'll sometimes add some of that. Some of it like has some of the different scents, that kind of thing. So what does everybody else do? Anybody else have a handy trick or tip that they do when they make their sugar water?
I take my feeder jar, fill it half full of sugar, fill the rest of it with water and hot water, and I'm off to the hives. Somebody asked a question about boiling, and I wouldn't recommend boiling it. I believe, and Mark could probably tell you, I believe there's a chemical that's created by boiling sugar that is detrimental to the bees.
Hydromethyl furfural.
See, I knew you would know.
Yeah. I've weighed it out, and I use about 3/4 of a glass jar of sugar water, and then I add boiling hot water to the top of it and let it soak in and then shake it. And that gives me pretty close to 1-to-1 by weight.
Yeah, and I use the big mouth quart mason jars, and I fill it up 2/3 with the sugar, and then we have like an instant hot thing for tea, and I put in like 2 cups of that, and then stir it up, and then I fill up the rest of it with cold, and I usually wait a few hours before I put it on there so it kind of cools down first. And then what I do is I just get what the Randy Oliver method of feeding. I just get a flat board with a 1-inch hole in the center of it, and then place the feeding jar with 3 holes right on top of that. And then that way I can, from a mile away, I can see if they need more sugar water or not.
Very good. All right. Everybody, thank you so much. I don't want to keep you all night because I know we could all keep talking about bees until midnight. So, and I have coconut cake to serve. So, with that, thank you so much. It was great to meet all of you. It was great to see new faces, and I have saved the chat. In fact, let me save it one more time right now. So we've saved it. We will post this recording on our YouTube channel, and we'll post the link on our Facebook page, and we'll probably email it out to everybody as well. So, but otherwise, have a great rest of your month, and we'll be back here. We'll be back on February 11th. All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Thank you too. Bye.